from 3 o'clock to 11:59. So we could say,
wait a minute, what did I do this time?
Yes. So he was successful and wore me down to 11:59. So I took pity on Finn for a change, and so it's 11:59. There is a Google Drive, so however you need to get that into the Google Drive, I have it where you can open it and submit it to Canvas like a normal assignment. Sometimes those files are big and it won't do that. So if you can't do that, open the Google folder and try to drag that in. If you can get it into Canvas, easy, just do that. I can move it to the Google Drive easy that way. So whichever way is easier for you to do, don't get all wackadoodle about that. I think I also told you guys that this is not a technology assignment. So if your lyrics don't match up exactly with your song, so please don't spin your wheels either trying to line up everything so that what you're singing is exactly on the slide at one time. I am not concerned about that because the words will be there. I really want you to see the words and make that connection with the song. Does that make sense? So as close as possible as you can. Again, it is not an assignment based on technology. It is just the idea of getting the words and the songs there. So what I started this conversation by saying when I started the 2 or 3 months, I am now at the same time period in history in 3 of my history classes. World history, not so much. So we are, just so that you know, my U.S. history class is now in the same spot. We started at Reconstruction in that class. That's how that class goes. So I'm at the same spot. We are just now doing, and I just did Spanish-American War with them. My AP Euro kids were obviously not the Spanish Civil War, but we're at the same time period. So this time period gets to me to be like Groundhog Day, and I don't know when I repeat or if I don't say things. So if I am repeating myself, I have not gone crazy. I am just having the same stuff over and over and over again. And also, my last Dr. Phil moment and my issues with my grad class and my professor. And Sophie needs to be here for this, but she can listen. I had to submit my research proposal, and my teacher's taken forever to grade stuff. Like, she's like 4 assignments behind. She started grading yesterday, and I get the little thing pop up on my little course activity. Wow, you are above average in this class than all the other students. You should think about helping or whatever. My little badge, I was like, woo. And then I pop up, and all these little assignments are like only worth 10 points. And then up pops my research proposal, which is 100 points. And I probably maybe even might cry when I say this. It pops up and it's got all this stuff that she comments on, which was not like positive things, which is why I wanted Sophie here. It was not like positive things. And then I look and I had a 0 out of 100. Thankfully, I opened that during my prep because I did burst into tears, like really crying tears. Not Mrs. Norris happy tears or not Mrs. Norris like, I love you guys so much. Please take care of yourself. I don't want anything bad. Like sobbing tears, like what Sophie wanted to do this morning. I'm like, holy cow, how did I get a 0? What did I do? And she had all these things like, you shouldn't use this kind of, so I emailed her back and I'm like, Dr. Hunt, thank you for your feedback. And I will take those specific sources off of my bibliography and I will work on my research being original. Could you please provide any input as to why I got no points on this assignment? And is there any way possible that I could resubmit it and make corrections for even partial credit? But I understand if I can't. So I send that like at 2:30. What? I know. I know. Why do you think I know how to do it? Sorry, voice down. Anyway, so I send that like at 2:30. and I'm trying like to do other things. I'm involved with my little secret sunshine. I had already bawled my eyeballs out when I'd been down there. Like, anyway, she emails me finally back. Well, she emailed me back later, but I didn't get it till after I got home from Quiz Bowl, and it's like 8:30, and I just get, I'm sorry, I forgot to hit the submit button. Like, no, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I caused you so much grief and made you cry. Sophie, you missed my crying thing.
You cried?
I cried like bawling eyeball tears.
Why?
Because I got a 0 out of 100 on my research proposal in my grad class. Yeah, but I really didn't. She just didn't hit submit. So yeah,
We don't like
So
her.
what'd you actually get?
we don't like her. No. What did I get? A 92. Yeah. Yeah, a 92. A 0. So, all right. I waited till you got back, and now
It's still there.
we are getting ready to. Have we started Cuba? Have we blown up the main yet? We blew up the main, and we are now ready to start the Spanish-American War. Is that correct?
We
We are
discussed it.
we are on page 9 or on page 6. Spanish-American War. So, first, if you look at Spanish-American War, there is one date, right? 1898. That's it. It is one and done. We don't fight this war for very long. Again, it's why most people are not even remotely aware that we had a war with Spain. But let's take a look at what happens, especially after on letter A. Spain agrees to everything. So the United States gives Spain a list of demands. And in that list of demands, Spain agrees to everything. They got everything. Spain says, whatever you guys want us to do, we'll check the box. We'll do whatever it is. But we don't agree. And two people in particular do not agree. President McKinley, two people in particularly do not want war, McKinley and Wall Street. Wall Street never wants war. It is not good for business. But the one group of people that does is the press. The yellow press are insisting on war, and cynically, the reason is it will sell newspapers. And again, not being condescending, but we did talk about the fact that newspapers make their money from ads, right? Newspapers do not make their money from selling individual newspapers for a penny. What newspapers can say to advertisers like Macy's in New York is, we have a circulation of 1 million readers. Your ad is going to be seen by 1 million readers. Therefore, we can charge this exuberant amount of money for ads. So that's what newspapers desire, readership. That's how they sell their newspaper and their ads. And for newspapers, war sells papers. And so that's what happens. McKinley doesn't want war, but was savagely criticized by imperialists like Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt grew up during the Civil War. He spent his child and boyhood sitting up in a 10-story Manhattan apartment, watching all these parades and all the regalia of the Union Army. And that is one of the things that, again, inspires lots of men that want to participate in war, not understanding the fact that that is a catastrophic event. It will be the same thing that we dealt with our war hawks in the War of 1812. We've gone an extensive amount of time without war, and these men are itching to prove their manhood, their courage, their virility in this idea of war. So Wall Street doesn't want war. It's going to interfere in trade with Cuba. The public, prodded by the yellow press, demands war to free abused Cubans. So that's what this war is supposed to be about. McKinley sends the war message to Congress April 11th, and the anti-imperialists say, very much like our war with our Mexican-American war, when our Whigs say you're only going to war to get Texas to make it a slave state. The anti-imperialists are saying you're only going to war so we can get Cuba for you to grow sugar. And so at this point, the imperialists say in Congress, well, that's not really what we want, but we'll create this thing called the Teller Amendment. The U.S. proclaimed that once it overthrew Spain and Cuba, the Cubans would have their freedom. Please highlight that, because and I'm going to talk about Finn again, who was part of the Academic Quiz Bowl WIC champions last night. You get asked a lot of questions about U.S. history, about things that did not happen. I think you had 3 of them last night about stuff that did not happen. That was just your team. There were lots. The Teller Amendment says to the public and to the Cubans, we aren't interested in your country. We just want to help you. Alarm bells should be going off in your head. That is not what we're going to do. It's not what we're going to do. But we write this little amendment as part of the war declaration. U.S. Army is weak compared to Spain. U.S. Navy slightly less powerful than Spain. On paper, Spain should win. But we start off in another part of the war with the Philippines. So Spain has 4 territories in our hemisphere. They have Guam, which is in the Pacific. They have the Philippines, which is in the Pacific. They have Puerto Rico, and they have Cuba. It should not be lost on you that in 5 short years, the United States is going to have Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. It should not be lost on you that on March 9th, 2021, we still have Guam and Puerto Rico and a little teeny bit of Cuba. We wanted that stuff, and that's what we will intentionally go to war for. So Admiral Dewey is going to be victorious in Manila Bay. While the Secretary of Navy was away, the Undersecretary of War, Theodore Roosevelt, cabled Dewey and said, attack, before he was supposed to. May 1898, Dewey's 6 warships sail into Manila Harbor, destroy 10 of Spain's warships, 400 Spaniards killed, with only 1 American death. And as you can imagine, that sells a lot of newspapers, and it is a large, huge, inflated puff of naval combatant for the United States Navy. And one of the things that's going to happen is Germany shows up. Our biggest threat at this point is Germany. Germany's going to arrive with 5 warships that are way more powerful than ours. And Dewey, in all of our American bravado, says, soon as you like, we'll go to war with you, which that would have devastated us. And again, months later, troops are going to, top of page 7, capture Manila. And then we will be aided by Filipino insurgents. And U.S. is going to annex the Philippines, meaning, hey, guess what, Filipinos, you are now part of the United States. Filipinos are going to lead an insurrection against the United States. And again, this is a time to think about words. In U.S. history, we call it a Filipino insurrection. Filipino history would call it their revolution, right? We call it an insurrection because we're trying to annex a group of people that's their own country, that belongs to them. And we have now taken over their country without asking, do you want to be part of the United States? Do you want us to take you over? We've taken them over. And so we call it an insurrection. For the Filipinos, it's their revolution. It's very a different feeling in the Philippines. The insurrection in the Philippines is going to last way longer than the Spanish-American War and kill a whole lot more people. So that is what is happening in Cuba and in the Philippines. And in the middle of all this, in July, we annex Hawaii. McKinley is now president. Remember, Grover Cleveland has said, nope, we don't think we should annex Hawaii. The Hawaiian people don't want that. McKinley is now president. And U.S. uses the pretense of needing Hawaii as a naval station, which we do. And it is one of the greatest harbors when in in the 16, 17, and 1800s, when all of our explorers are exploring the Pacific Ocean and all the islands. There are two places in particular that they point out that have fantastic harbors and would be a great place. One of them is Hawaii and Pearl Harbor. We have known about the significance of that port for a very long period of time. And so, this is the time period of which we decide to annex Hawaii. The white-dominated government in Hawaii, eager to be annexed, just like Texas. A joint resolution approved by Congress, and Hawaiians will be granted U.S. citizenship and receive full territorial status in 1900. So as a territory, Hawaii gets treated as a territory. You are citizens. You have all the rights as being a territory, except that is not what they wanted. They were their own nation. While that's happening, the United States invades Cuba and Puerto Rico. Spanish fleet eventually blockaded in Santiago Harbor by a stronger U.S. fleet. So that naval blockade keeps the Spanish blockade from getting anything in. U.S. Army takes the high ground near Santiago. And this is Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Rider. So those of you that are familiar with Teddy Roosevelt in the movie Night at the Museum, on his horse, on his little brown uniform, this is what he is doing. He is our Rough Rider. Heavy fighting at San Juan Hill. The Rough Riders charge up the hill after it's already been won. Guess who won it? Two black regiments win the battle, and Teddy Roosevelt's group take the lead and will claim that right in history. July 1st, Spanish fleet is destroyed. 500 Spaniards, 1 American. Santiago surrenders. Casualties, about 379 dead, but 5,000 due to disease. 5,000 people. Those of you that are interested in medicine and or medical history or any kind of immunization, disease, plaguey type stuff, this is when the United States really begins to develop a medical type of military type of thing. And what they're looking at is yellow fever. Because when we go to build the Panama Canal, we'll have the same kind of thing. Trying to find cures for malaria and yellow fever, of which there is. You can get a shot for yellow fever and malaria. And when we moved to Okinawa, when I was a kid, we had to get shots for yellow fever. And that shot, I still remember because it is the most painful shot I've ever had. My arm felt like it grew like 5 feet and I couldn't move it. And typhoid also gives you that same horrible. But any of you that are interested in that kind of medical and developing of the medical part of the military, it starts now. So we invade Puerto Rico, take that island, and August 12th, 1898, Spain is ready to sign a peace treaty called, guess what? Treaty of Paris. I then again have to talk about Finn because the championship game was Edgewood, and there was a question about the peace treaty that ended the War of 1812, and the little Edgewood kid did what I am sure his history teacher said, if you don't know, always guess, Treaty of Paris. And he did, Treaty of Paris. I can't watch and look at Finn because he should know the answer, and he buzzed in with Treaty of Ghent. Yes, you got that one right. So, but Treaty of Paris again. Treaty of Paris, Treaty of Paris. The only one that is not Treaty of Paris is World War II, the Treaty of Ghent. So remember that. Treaty of Paris. Cuba is freed from Spain. United States receives Guam. Again, we still have Guam as a territory. People who live on Guam are citizens. They travel back and forth. It is an island full of black snakes everywhere, like hanging from the trees. Like you land in Guam, you look out of the trees. What are those things in the trees? They are snakes. They are horrific black snakes. I don't think they're poisonous, but I think they are horrific on the environment. United States gets Puerto Rico, of which the United States still controls Puerto Rico. It is a territory of the United States. People born in Puerto Rico are citizens of the United States. They are allowed travel back and forth. They have all rights as citizens, except they are not allowed to vote for president. They have representatives that represent them in the House. They are not allowed to vote there. The citizens of Puerto Rico have many times brought to themselves referendums if they want to become a state, and it's always no. They like being Puerto Rico. The United States uses Puerto Rico as a really important Navy base that the Puerto Ricans would really like us to get rid of because it is a weapons station. It is a gigantic weapons station named for Teddy Roosevelt. It's called Roosevelt Roads, known in the Navy community as Rosie Roads. It is a place where you offload and onload weapons, which makes, obviously, Puerto Rico a target because it's got weapons of the Atlantic Fleet. New ships go out to two places when they get built. They pick up their weapons and load off in Rosie Roads, and then they go out to Gitmo for what's called shock trials. And essentially what they do during shock trials is try to blow the heck up out of the ship. They take gigantic explosives, and each day they get the explosive closer and closer to the ship, trying to shake out anything. It's kind of like buying a car. You drive it under certain conditions. You, in the old days, kick the tires and all that stuff, and that's what they're doing to the ship. My husband has a picture of one of the ships that he was on that was brand new, and it's got this big, giant, whatever you call water that goes high up in the air. I don't know. And at the top of it is just this little orange thing. And that little orange thing weighs about 4 tons. And everyone stands at their battle stations while they blow this ship up. And he said it was just a really surreal kind of thing to have your ship being blown up around you and having to do all your battle station stuff. So those two places that we get, and again, obviously we don't have all of Cuba. We retain Guantanamo Bay or Gitmo as a Navy base. And Puerto Rico were sought out for military purposes, and they remain a strong part of our military purposes. So at the top of page 8, the problem becomes not Cuba, but the Philippines. What are we going to do about the Philippines? The Philippines are a group of islands close by China. There are a gazillion Filipino islands. There's a lot of them. Filipinos had been imperialized by Spain for hundreds of years. That's why if you know anyone that's Filipino, they are Asian, obviously, but they have last names that sound very Hispanic. One of my best friends in high school was Filipino, and her last name was Vasquez, which is not a name that you would think would be from an Asian country. The vast majority of them are also Catholic because that was imposed on them. And we have a real dilemma as a country as to what we're going to do with the Philippines because we captured it. And so on top of page 8, McKinley's dilemma, valuable Philippines. It is bigger than the British Isles. It has a population of 7 million. It has a fantastic place to put the military. Fantastic. Don't feel that we should give it back to Spain. If left alone, the Philippines might fall into anarchy. That's what they think, right? But the thought is, oh my gosh, they might run themselves. Or Germany might take them. The least of the evils was to take the Philippines and leave independence for later. So that's what we do. We buy and purchase the Philippine Islands from Spain. And big giant box around the next paragraph, imperialism debate is touched off by the Spanish-American War. Most importantly, about the Philippines. Philippines created a huge, huge imperialism debate. Expansionists, pressured from various groups, forced McKinley's hand. Philippines and Hawaii are necessary to take steps toward Asia. This is McKinley's argument. We have to be a part of this trade in China. Protestant missionaries are eager to convert Catholic Filipinos. There's 7 million Catholic people. Let's go convert them. Doesn't work. Businessmen want the Philippines for new markets and raw materials. Now, what the Philippines does have are exotic woods. By that, things like sandalwood and teak and those types of woods that even today in the 21st century are really expensive. Go find yourself a teak bowl, like a salad bowl. You're going to pay upwards of $100 for that bowl. Sandalwood, the same. Sandalwood is a very valuable wood. I think it has a nice smell. I'm not sure the other properties of it. I don't know if it's a hardwood. I don't know why. But by the 1940s, there will be hardly any sandalwood anywhere in Southeast Asia. We take all of it, just about annihilate it. McKinley later said, please look at 2 and put a box around 2. This is really important. This is factual based. It's not going to sound like something, but factually based. McKinley said an inner voice told him to take all the Philippines and Christianize them and civilize them after he prayed. And that's his justification. Democrats tended to be anti-imperialist, especially William Jennings Bryan. Here is his problem. Please look at B1. Feared issues would overshadow reforms needed at home. And what the political cartoons are going to talk about this issue is several things. And one of the most popular is McKinley standing, praying, and taking this. He prayed about civilizing Filipinos. And in the background will be an image of an African American being lynched, women having no voice and no right, other minorities in our own country being mistreated. And so what William Jennings Bryan, Mark Twain, all those people are saying is very simple. Hey, we should clean up all the issues in our own country about minority issues and helping people before we do that in other places. Others feared American factories would be relocated overseas. Again, not a new topic, this idea of jobs moving overseas. Colonies would require a standing army and put United States soldiers in danger. What it does, and that is still an essential part of the United States military, no matter what branch you join, that you are going to be sent somewhere. If you join the Army, there is no way you can get out of a 4-year enlistment without going to Okinawa or Japan. You just go there. Every single Marine, every single Army person ends up either there, or I should either say there, or Korea. Those are the 2 places everybody goes because of the increased need to protect in that part of the world. And let's look at B5. These people are not, again, holier than thou. These people are feared of mongrelization. Mongrelization means white people are going to have babies with people with different colored skin. That is a huge, huge part of the anti-imperialist. Mongrelization. It's a weird word, but every time you see that, that just means people are afraid of mixing races. And at this point, there are lots of laws across the United States, not just in the South, that says and will not allow the marriage of mixed races. So as a result of this, we get the Anti-Imperialist League, formed again to oppose McKinley's expansion. And it is a large group of people. Presidents of Stanford and Harvard, Mark Twain, Samuel Gompers, Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie's still floating around. He says we should not be doing this. Filipinos wanted freedom. United States would be entangled politically and militarily in Asia. Yes. We are in 1889 about to be entangled in Asia, and we will not get out of Asia. We will be entangled for decades and decades and decades and decades in Asia, culminating in the Vietnam War. The top of page 9, expansion and imperialist. Why people were attracted to this imperialistic idea. Appeal to patriotism and the glory of annexation, played up as possible trade profits. Philippines had an abundance of natural resources. And when we think about those natural resources, they're exotic. They are things that could make capitalists and entrepreneurs a lot of money. So this isn't wood like pine and oak. This is mahogany. This is teak. This is valuable hardwoods, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. Look at D4. Let's pull at those heartstrings. Uplift the world's poor. William Jennings Bryan said, hey, we got a whole country of poor people right here. How about we do that here first? That would be William Jennings Bryan. This is a really, really popular long essay question. Compare and contrast the beliefs of imperialists with anti-imperialists. Very much the same type of robber barons and captain of industry. Senate passed a treaty and will approve the Treaty of Paris to end the Spanish-American War. So as a result of this, we have an issue about what does it mean for these countries that are annexed. And this is on page 9, a box around the insular cases, because this is Supreme Court. We now have problems. We now have and made people citizens outside of the United States. And we don't really know what that means. I've been telling you what it means because we know. But at the time period, we had no real clue what that meant to have territories. We've not had them. So what happens to the people who live there? So the Supreme Court cases concerning the extent to which constitutional rights applied to people of these newly acquired territories. And that's what our Supreme Court was designed to do. What happens to these people? What do they do? Where do they go? In the 1901 Supreme Court rulings, some rights are fundamental and applied to all American territory. Other rights are procedural and should not be imposed upon those unfamiliar with American law. Congress must determine which procedural rights applied to unincorporated territories, and most important, D. 2D is what you need to remember. The Constitution does not follow the flag. So when we stick our flag down in Puerto Rico, the people in Puerto Rico do not get all of the rights under the Constitution. It's not going to happen in Cuba. It's not going to happen in Hawaii. It's not going to happen. That becomes very convenient because now Congress can decide which laws that they want Hawaiians, Filipinos, Cubans to have. Please, again, even though especially in places like Cuba and Puerto Rico, the skin tones of people go from a wide range of people, my skin color, and I'm talking about the 21st century, people my skin color, all the way to skin color with a lot of pigment like Sammy Sosa. Sammy Sosa's from Cuba. So that wide range gives the United States a little bit of hesitation to say you get all the rights of the Constitution. Those, especially Puerto Rico and Cuba, are made up of 3 different ethnicities: Spanish, European, indigenous people, and slaves, African slaves. And so that pigment tone has a wide range. So it should not be lost on you that we do not want the Constitution to follow the flag, because that would be allowing a lot of people with a lot of different skin tones same rights as white people in the United States. And it is freezing in here. Okay, questions, anybody, about any of that?